Hello again, and welcome back to week 29 of year 3 of the Religious Education Initiative. Last time we read from Matthew chapter 23 as Jesus, being in the temple, finally denounces the Pharisees after preaching to them, exhorting them, and disputing with them throughout every other confrontation we have seen in the entirety of this Gospel of Matthew. We noted how this final denunciation shows God's judgment on those who have been placed in authority and have abused that place. We noted how there is a sadness to the judgment of the Pharisees because so much of what they taught was actually correct, as Jesus himself emphasizes when he tells the people, do what they say, but not what they do. Now, immediately after this, in chapters 24 and 25, Jesus leaves the temple and goes to the Mount of Olives, where he tells his disciples what's going to happen with the temple in Jerusalem. He warns them about the destruction of these things, and to illustrate this, he then tells them three parables. The parable of the 10 virgins, the parable of the talents, and the parable of the Last Judgment. These are all readings that we will see in the church in the course of Holy Week, but for the REI, the Religious Education Initiative readings, we actually need to skip these for now and skip ahead to the Last Supper so we can arrive at the crucifixion here during Holy Week and at the resurrection during Bright Week. We will return in the course of the weeks following between Pascha and the end of August, and we will read these remaining parables. So this now is chapter 26, so we're skipping again from the end of chapter 23, where we were last week, to the beginning of chapter 26. Jesus has just finished telling his disciples about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, and giving them the parables of the 10 virgins, of the talents, and of the Last Judgment. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus by stealth and to kill him. But they said, "Not during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people." Now, while Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. But when the disciples saw it, they were angry and said, "Why this waste? For this ointment could have been sold for a large sum, and the money given to the poor." But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why do you trouble the woman? She has performed a good service for me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her." Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver, and from that moment he began to look for an opportunity to betray him. On the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Where do you want us to make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is near. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, he took his place with the 12, and while they were eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." And they became greatly distressed, and began to say to him one after another, "Surely not I, Lord." He answered, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." He replied, "You have said so." While they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it. He gave it to the disciples, and he said, "Take, eat, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, For this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will never again drink of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters because of me this night, for it is written, 'I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered.' But after I am raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples. Now, there are many, many things that we could point out about this, but I want to emphasize very clearly that whatever we can conclude from the events that Matthew describes here, the way he tells the story is very clearly done to emphasize one point, and that is that Jesus is in complete control. He is the complete master of this situation. Every step of what is happening, he tells them before it happens. That is where the chapter begins. You know, after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. That is the summary of everything else that's about to happen, and Jesus tells them in advance. There's clearly not a concern about spoilers here, not just in a narrative sense, but in the historical reality. Jesus tells them everything that's going to happen before it happens, to show them that he goes willingly, and to show that Jesus' will is the one that is guiding and governing this. We even see immediately afterwards that this was the time when the chief priests and the elders of the people made alliance with the high priest, and they conspired together, which is a big deal for the high priest and the elders. The chief priests and the elders, we know that the Pharisees are involved as well. This is a big deal. All of them are conspiring to arrest Jesus by stealth and to kill him. By stealth and to kill him, okay? But then they say, but not during the festival. So their intent is, wait for everyone to leave. Wait till Passover is over, and then we'll find a chance to grab him secretly and kill him. Maybe we're imagining a mob, a pretend mob, which is normally the way that this sort of thing would be done. Raise up enough of a mob, and then who knows who might die in the course of all of that. Right? But their intent is not during the festival, except that events force their hand. Judas comes to them, promises to betray Jesus, which is what they're looking for, but then it happens, Judas comes and says, this is where he is now. They lose control of the narrative that they've intended, because the Lord himself, he is the one who is choosing this. This is not by accident, and this is not according to anyone else's plan, but the Lord's. And again, throughout we see, the Lord references his burial. In verse 12, after the anointing, he tells them again that he's going to be betrayed. In verse 21, he points out who it is that's doing it. He tells them that he is pouring out his blood in verse 28. He tells them that they're all going to desert him in verse 31. And they all say, no, we won't, even though within an hour, all of them will be running away. So Jesus is the only one who is an active, intentional agent throughout this whole story. Everyone else is reacting and responding, but the Lord is moving with purpose and intent through this narrative, through this process, celebrating the Passover, celebrating the mystical supper, showing his disciples, establishing for them the sacrament of the Eucharist, and then showing them what that means by offering himself willingly to them and to all of us for the life of the world. This is what's happening. This is what we are celebrating every time we gather for the Divine Liturgy, and this is what we are observing and seeing in the Passion account that we have now well begun. So, that's it for today. God bless you all. See you next week.